Here we go.
What is up, everybody? Okay, we're getting some echoing here. What is up, everybody? All right, hold on a second. Okay, we're getting... Okay, I got it taken care of. There we go. After you've done 5,000 of these, you still mess up every once in a while, but we're good to go. What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations 2020, Best Podcast News Award winner, given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. I also co-host and co-produce the only online show in the world for dads and fathers. It's sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. And as always, I'd like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. And it is June 9th here in the Toronto area. So we're broadcasting live on June 9th. I don't know where you guys are, but we're hanging out live here in Toronto. We had a little bit of rain today, but the sunshine is out and it's Black Canada Talking. If you don't know what Black Canada Talking is all about, it is an online show, online conversation where Black Canadians discuss things that are passionate about them, whether it's local, provincial, national, internationally, with their own point of view. So before we get into anything else, a few quick things. Please subscribe to the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube and hit the notification button. Also, follow the Dr. Vibe Show on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. And also, too, to advertise your business, product, or service on any of the platforms that I'm a part of, please feel free to email me at dr.vibe@vibeshow.com. Well, you know, one of the things I love about doing these live conversations, when people come back. So we have two friends who haven't been with us for a minute, but about a month ago, they said, you know what, we need to come back. So I said, oh, anytime. So we have a really important conversation topic to chat about today. But most importantly, let's bring up the stars of the show. Dr. Helen Ofosu and Kafui Sawyer. What is going on?
So much. It's
so much. You've dashed me for so long. Now you're back.
Yes, we are. Lovely to see you, Dr. Vibe.
Lovely to see you both. What's been going on in both your worlds?
Where do we start, Kafui? Where do we start?
Well, let me make a suggestion. Why don't you both of you introduce yourselves to our audience, and then we can find out about your worlds.
All right.
That sounds great.
Who goes first?
Maybe we'll get Helen to go first.
All right, sure. I'm Helen Ofosu. By profession, I'm an organizational psychologist. And I've been using that to offer executive coaching, career coaching, some HR services, and some training through my own company since 2012. My company is called IO Advisory Services. And I love that I've survived almost a dozen years as a Black entrepreneur, because when I started, it wasn't that cool to be a Black entrepreneur. Outside of work, I'm many things. I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a mom, a boy mom, a partner or wife, and a friend now to Kafui for some years.
I love that intro.
Kafui. And you know what? When I was listening to your intro, I remembered two things that I don't often talk about. I've had a couple of awards this year.
Oh, yes.
One was a nomination for a Trillium Award. For my book, How to Be Resilient in Your Career, Facing Up to Barriers at Work. So that was lovely. And I've also been given an award by the Canadian Society for Industrial and Organizational Psychologists. I'm their outstanding practitioner this year.
Woo-hoo!
What?
Bring it? Yes. Yes.
What?
Indeed. Yes.
Should I get up and leave and let you just take over the show?
Nothing like that.
Okay. Just, I'm more than willing to give up space,
No. You're the sponsored host, so
All right.
we're all equivalent here.
I love that. Kafui, it's your turn.
Oh man, with an introduction like that. Oh
Yeah,
man,
I
Helen,
know.
that is amazing, amazing, amazing. Well, Helen forgot to mention that she's also the chair of our Black psychology section of the Canadian Psychological Association. So she is our chair, and we love Helen. As a business psychologist, she is just a wonderful person, and it's a blessing to know Helen for over 24 years, actually.
What?
Yeah, we go way back.
My son.
Hold on now. So I need to find out how did you two meet, and do you remember the first meeting?
Yeah,
I don't
I
remember
do.
the very first, but I remember the general context. Go ahead, Kafui. You go ahead.
No. Well, I was a poor student, and Helen was looking to hire someone to run. She and her husband back then, her ex-husband, actually were running. Had an art business, and so I am a marketer. I know how to talk, right? So they needed somebody to move the business forward. So I came in as a marketer to market your business for them. So yeah. So she hired me.
I was there in name. It was really his business.
I got the job. I got the job, Dr. Vibe.
Hold on. So there was life before what you're doing now?
Oh yeah.
For both of you?
Well, I mean, I had just graduated from graduate school, so I was working for the government as a psychologist. But
Okay.
at the time, my husband had an African art business.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Mhm.
And do you remember the first time you met?
I do not.
I actually do. We met in a friend's home. And Helen was visiting this friend whom I was living with at that time.
Okay.
Yes, and so yeah, we did meet in a friend's home. Yeah,
Okay. All
and
right.
we have maintained a relationship for a while. Well, I went away from Ottawa when I got married and moved to New Brunswick and British Columbia, and I returned to Ottawa. Just a little bit over 10 years ago, and reconnected again with Helen.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know this isn't part of what you were expecting today, but I think it's really important. It's really important because relationship and friendship, what does your relationship to the other mean to you?
Okay, so I can answer.
She is the talker, right?
Well, yes, exactly. I have a lot to say on this show, Dr. Vibe.
Good.
So yeah, and I've always seen Helen as a mentor in terms of, I know she's a few years older than me, and I respect her ability to be able to run a business. So I run a business as well. I'm here to introduce myself, and so it was just wonderful to come back. And when I needed a lot of support to move the Black psychology section within the CPA, I am like, who is going to help me move this? Who do I know who is in my corner and I can rely on and count on? And so I think the relationship has been built on dependability, loyalty, and trust. And so we have been able to move the friendship on in that spirit, in the spirit of dependability, trust, and loyalty.
Wow, I can feel in my bones. Kafui's gonna let it out today. She's ready to roll. Helen, go ahead.
Well, here's the thing. When Kafui came to me and said what she wanted to do, I knew it was important. And Kafui, you'll remember that I said, it's a great idea, but I don't have time for that.
Mm-hmm.
But still, I knew I had to do what I could with whatever cracks were in my schedule. I could just help her because a lot was at stake. And if not us, then who? there are hardly any Black people in psychology. So, I still don't have a lot of time, but when it became my turn to step up and become the chair, I figured somehow it'll work out.
And it has.
And it has, by God's grace.
By God's grace. And really, I don't think there are too many people who could have asked me to take this on, and I would have said yes. So that's a testament to Kafui.
That's high praise.
She has a lot of integrity, a lot of decency, kindness, selflessness. So I really couldn't say no, even though it meant basically most of last year I barely had any weekends off, barely had evenings off. It's been a big
wow. I think I'm seeing an African woman blush in my screen here. Kafui, you look like you're blushing with joy and pride and love, aren't you?
I am. That's why I'm wearing my Ghanaian outfit, Yes. Went to church and I'm like, I'm leaving this on for Dr. Vibe's show today.
And in fairness, my busy schedule was not entirely because of the Black psychology section. It was partly because at the same time, there were a lot of things happening in my son's life, amazing, beautiful things, but things that required my time and attention. And at the same time, I had my book launching, and there was a lot of things around that, managing my own business, some issues with my mother-in-law. So it's just been a busy season.
Yeah, it sounds like the word convergence was part of your journey last year.
Yeah.
Wow. That's lots going on. So would you call yourselves twin sisters of different mothers?
Sure.
Yes. Why not? Why not?
We both have lots of intensity, but hers is more visible than mine. Mine's kind of under the surface, and hers is more transparent.
Wow.
I'm a mover and a shaker, Dr. Vibe.
Yeah,
I'm a different type.
Yes, you both score goals and get wins in different ways.
That's right.
Is that the best way to put it?
That's right. Absolutely.
All right. This is what I'm going to do. We're going to take a quick little break because when we get into our conversation, I don't want to take any breaks. I want it to be a continuous flow. But before we get to our break, Urson Mills says, "Congratulations, doctor." What like that? What happened?
He's a good friend from when I was in grad school in Windsor. Hey, Ezron.
Thank you. And then Dr. Candace Bovell. Fantastic.
Part of our section.
There you go. Well, and keep the comments coming, especially if you're live. I just wanted to put man, I wish I could have taken a screen capture when I put Ezron Mills. Helen's face.
Very, very good person. Very, very kind.
Well, very good to have them here. So we're going to take a 2-minute break, and then we're going in. That's all I'm going to say. We're going in. So keep it locked. You're watching Black Canada Talking with the Dr. Vibe.
And that's what I feel like. You feel like you're the Harriet Tubman of the mind.
I am.
I feel like I'm I'm one of the Harriet Tubmans of intelligent Black people. Like, I want to liberate y'all from like being left behind and ignored and oblivion. No, really, the rappers get all the attention. Seriously, does anybody else feel this way? Like ignorant Black people, they'll be all up, getting all the headlines on the Shade Room.
Overly sexualized Black folks.
Like the twerkers and the just people that, don't always represent the best of us, the diversity, like people like Dr. Vibe. Like, everybody should know about people like Dr. Vibe. Dr.
Really
Vibe he's trying to do good work for Black people. Dr. Vibe from Toronto. Good to see you, my brother. Dr. Vibe. Everybody follow Dr. Vibe. He has a great show. He's very good at what he does, and I have a lot of respect for him. The men who are also doing the same thing. I see Dr. Vibe in here. He's a great brother. Everybody should follow Dr. Vibe, by the way. He's a smart brother in Canada, and we need to follow smart people. So follow Dr. Vibe if you see him in the chat. And Dr. Vibe, say your name in the chat so people can see you. I want you to click on his name, and I want you to go follow him, please, because I want these men and women that are doing the right things to get the support they deserve. Hey, Dr. Vibe, how you doing, brother? Again, like I always do, I gotta say everybody should go follow Dr. Vibe. He's got a great show. Dr. Vibe, I know Dr. Vibe's got a kingdom because I see your channel. I see you pouring into that every day. Everybody should follow Dr. Vibe, by the way. Look him up, Dr. Vibe, V-I-B-E. He's a great friend of me and my wife, and I love this guy. Okay, so let me hop into this. What's up, Dr. Vibe? How you doing? Everybody, if you see Dr. Vibe in the chat, everybody go follow the Dr. Vibe show. Dr. Vibe is a real smart brother and a good human being. I like the guy a lot, and he's very intelligent. And I think everyone should pay attention to what he's got going on. We got to shine the spotlight on the intelligent Black people out here that are really doing the good work. Don't just pay attention to the rappers and the celebrities. You know, a lot of these people are losers. Your true winners are your people in your community that are really having your back. Helping us to have stronger families and a stronger community. So Dr. Vibe is in that category. So you might see the Dr. Vibe show in this chat. If you see him, please go follow him. Okay. All right. So anyway.
What is up? We are back. Thank you always to Dr. Boyce and Dr. Alicia Watkins for their continuous support. But we have two superstars today, and we're going to go in, like I said before the break, another light conversation when these two ladies are sharing with us the challenges with Black mental health and how we can do better in our Canadian society. Why did you want to come back and chat about this subject today?
Before we get to that, we haven't had Kafui's intro.
Oh, that's right. Duh.
Yeah.
Duh.
I'm ready to jump into the question.
I know. Like she just Kafui roll.
Okay. All right. So you had asked previously what we're actually doing. So I returned to school last year. So I'm a doctoral student at the University of Ottawa in the clinical psychology program. I'm a registered psychotherapist, so I am not a psychologist. And so there are limitations within my practice as a psychotherapist. And that encouraged me to go back to school so that I can do or meet all the needs of the racialized people who come see me in my practice. And so some people may say, what's the point in going back? As a clinical psychologist, if I end up making it through the program, I will be able to help.
You when you
I will. I will when I get through.
Yeah, it's a done deal. It's a done deal. So keep on going. So
we'll be back for that.
Exactly.
That's a good one. Thank
right.
you so much. Thank you so much. So that's really what I'm actually doing. I've been running my own clinical practice for since 2012. So that's a little bit over 12 years. The name of my practice is Joy Health and Research Center. And I'm a family therapist. I'm a trauma consultant as well. I also work on contract with Health Canada. And I've been working with them for over 10 years, and I still do. I enjoy my work with Health Canada. I am also the founding chair of the Black Psychology section, which we actually just talked about previously for the Canadian Psychological Association. And I'm a mom. I have 3 children. My children are a little older. I have a 19-year-old and twin boys. And I've been married for over 21 years. And I really enjoy my family. I love the support around me. And I have to say something. I love being Black.
Okay.
I love being Black, Dr. Vibe.
B1, as I like to say. B1. Black first, right? 100%. Helen, does Kafui sleep?
I don't know.
Really? Because I'm going, is she going to stop with the background? I'm going to, like, nothing about sleep in there.
She probably doesn't waste a lot of time.
Well, I know that from both of you. You know, time never lost a fight with either one of you.
No.
Wow. Okay. Well, Helen, thank you for reminding me to get the other, your sister background but leads me to one question. What is the difference professionally on what you do versus the other one? Is there a professional, because it sounds like you don't do the same thing. So I want people to just know the difference
between psychologists and psychotherapists.
Yes, please. Yes.
Go for it, Kafui.
Okay, so Helen is a business psychologist, what we call a business psychologist. She is a psychologist, but she's not involved in clinical work. So she would do everything there is to do within an organization, and I'm sure she can speak to that herself. As a clinician, I'm a psychotherapist. So in psychotherapy, we actually assess and we treat mental health conditions. We also provide counseling and guidance, and we do everything there is in terms of mental health treatment, but we do not diagnose in terms of the limitations that's put on us with our regulatory college. So psychotherapists in Ontario, I can't speak for the other provinces because some provinces have different mandates and rules around that. But in Ontario, psychotherapists do not offer a diagnosis, but they can assess and engage in treatment.
Thank you.
Go
ahead.
See, here's one. I guess we should probably talk a little bit about times in our lives when it would be helpful to have a Black psychologist who can provide a diagnosis. Because I think there's a lot of blurring between psychotherapy, psychology, psychiatry. And so people don't realize why Black psychologists are essential. I mean, all the different parts, all the different professions are essential, but there's a very specific role for psychologists who can make these diagnoses. So for instance, with me, when I'm doing executive coaching or career coaching, and there's something that's obviously bothering somebody that's more personal, I count on being able to introduce my clients to either a psychotherapist or a clinical psychologist. And the clinical psychologists in particular are helpful if somebody has been harmed and a diagnosis is required to help document that harm, right, in terms of damages. In addition, if somebody has undiagnosed ADHD or something else that may be impacting their ability to perform at work, then that needs to be addressed. And I like it when I can find a Black person when I know that my Black client or my racialized client has been harmed in ways that only racialized people are harmed. Because it's tough to always count on non-Black or non-racialized people because they don't always understand some of the nuances. And those nuances, they cut deep.
100%.
Yeah.
Kafui, anything you want to add after what was just shared?
I think Helen hit the nail on the head. Really, that's the reason of me returning to school because there was often a gap in the services I was providing as a psychotherapist, where I will assess my clients and their families, and then they probably need a diagnostic assessment, which I am not able to provide, and then I have to refer them out to another psychologist or another clinician who can provide a diagnosis. So a psychiatrist or their family physician. And it was always creating a gap in the system. And I started to see that my Black people, who actually were already having challenges in accessing mental health care. You come see Kafui, and then after that, Kafui says, well, I think you really need a diagnostic assessment, and now you have to start afresh with another person. And usually that person is not Black. If you live in the area where I live in Ottawa, I'm not even sure we have 5 Black psychologists here in Ottawa. I'm not sure about the numbers.
Wow.
Because data collection is another problem.
Mm-hmm.
But you can find majority of white psychologists. And so what happens is my clients sometimes don't end up going. They're like, no, I'm not going to see a white psychologist. I'm not going to do that. And so they end up not going. And so they are not able to get the diagnostic assessment that I have actually referred them to.
And Dr. Vibe, it's even bigger than that. Many families have issues where there's a breakdown in the marital relationship. And then if there are children involved, there may be a custody evaluation. And when it's a non-Black person who gets involved, sometimes that does not work well for the family. So that's another role for psychologists.
Mm-hmm.
If you have children in school and maybe they are gifted or need, maybe they have ADHD or they're on the autism spectrum, all of these are things that require a psychologist or a psychiatrist. So there are lots of important places in our lives, whether it's our own mental health, our children's education, family status. All of these things require some nuanced insights, not just insights, but nuanced diagnoses in certain situations. And when you have, 50 or 60 across the whole country, well, that's clearly not meeting the needs.
Okay, I think this segues well into our first conversation now. The difficulty for Black people in Canada have finding Black psychologists. And I want to go from this perspective, especially not only during pandemic, but post-pandemic. Has the environment got better in resolving this challenge?
Maybe I can take this, and Helen, you can follow through for me. I think most universities are the ones who train psychologists, and the province actually regulates them to practice. So I think after the pandemic, Helen, and actually during the pandemic, Helen and I did an interview with CBC on the fact that we had very small number of Black psychologists in Canada overall, and this was a problem. And so since the airing of that interview, we noticed that universities were shifting to actually be more inclusive of BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color into their psychology programs. And so we've seen a shift in the process. I can speak about my own university. University of Ottawa has now developed a BIPOC pool for the admission process, where they are allowing 67% of BIPOC into the program. And so there's been a shift in the process. But, Dr. Vibe, it takes about 7 years to actually train a psychologist. Yes. From when they actually start the program. So it takes up to 7 years. So I started with a master's into this program. Hopefully, I'm hoping it's not going to take me 7 years to complete this. But in Ontario, or I can say for the University of Ottawa, most students actually take up to 7 years or even more to complete their program, the degree program. So it looks like Black people are going to have to wait until those 7 years are passed and students are graduated from the program. And then you have to be licensed in the province. You have to pass an exam. The whole process is so tiring and so exhausting. Sometimes I wonder if people actually give up. Maybe there are more people who've been graduated through the program as Black students and probably don't get regulated. I don't know. And I think we're missing the data to tell us how things are going.
Now, there's one other thing that I'll mention. Just like in the regular workplace, we often have employment equity, for instance, where we're trying to improve the representation of all the designated groups. And so for this audience, the visible minority category had been the category that Black people were in. But when we look at the data over these past, 30, 40 years, it's very obvious that other racialized people, not Black people, but other racialized people have done pretty well in terms of employment equity. But Black people as a group have not. And it seems very familiar what's happening in graduate programs. So on the surface of it, Black, Indigenous, and people of color are getting higher rates of admission. But the Black admission rate is still very low from whatever I've seen. And I remember during the pandemic, I knew a student who actually changed her name from an African name to a more neutral name so that when she was applying, hopefully she would, at least get through the initial screening and get considered. because that's how anti-Black psychology has been perceived, at least from this student's perspective, and frankly from others' perspectives.
That is very disturbing news to hear. I want to stay on this for a moment too. So Dr. Aaron Beetham, I hope I get it right. If it's my head, not my heart if I get it wrong, but says, so appreciative of your work, Dr. Helen and Kafui. Awesome to see this topic discussed. Dr. Candace Pavel says, that's great news about the U of Ottawa program. And good afternoon to Fitness IQ Cam. I want to ask in regards to the education of Blacks, Africans in these programs, is it at all culturally based? Oh, but did I say something wrong, Kafui? Did I say something wrong?
We are not poker players, are we?
Yeah, no, not at all. Not at all. Because for me, if there's not a sense of cultural base of education, the alignment's not going to work, or has a less chance of working. Because I'm thinking, yes, Black people can find psychology, but do they have Afrocentric training?
No.
Do you want me to leave now, Kafui? Because you're just saying, I just ready for you to wind up. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Because, I am fresh in school, so I am experiencing things in school that are quite shocking for me, actually, and quite surprising. When I did my master's many years ago, I had a lot of support. So I did my master's back in Trinity Western University in British Columbia. My professors were wonderful and very open and accepting and very culturally competent. And so when I came to the University of Ottawa, and I can only speak from my experience, I was amazed to find 2 Black psychologists on staff. So we have 2 professors who are Black. And I was amazed to see the changes they're doing in the program in terms of their ability to create cultural diversity, cultural competency. And I was also amazed to see some very wonderful white professors who were so involved in this process. My supervisor is a white supervisor. And if I can say, my supervisor is married to a Black man. And so she has an openness. She understands my struggles as a Black student in the program and has been very supportive of my learning. I should say that there have also been other professors who are actually culturally competent in terms of their openness and their humility to learn. And that has been very helpful for me. Now, I have also experienced some very discriminatory behaviors from professors in my program, and just 2 of them, or 3 of them, I should say. And so that has been very challenging and difficult for me as a student. And so in terms of, moving cultural competency forward, I think my program is actually trying to do that. It is actually incorporated into every aspect of our learning and teaching. And I think that has been quite helpful. But I think we still have a long way to go because there are still some people who are actually stubborn, who don't want to change. And because you're caught up in the systems that have actually promoted racism in psychology. And so if I can just share with you, I actually wrote a few things just because I know the audience will be listening. So if you take a look at the history of psychology, in terms of our education towards mental health. So we can't talk about mental health without talking about psychology. So Dr. Vibe, I'm very glad you're asking about this question because mental health, our understanding of mental health comes from the study of psychology. And so we have notables in psychology like Dr. Stanley, who said Africans, Indians, and Chinese are members of adolescent races in a stage of incomplete growth. So you think about, a white person talking about Africans, Indians, and Chinese people like this, you can just see the racism that's rooted in psychology. Then you have Popenoe, I can never say his name right, who said intelligence is determined by the amount of white blood one has. So this has been passed on over generations, onto some of these professors who are actually quite notable in psychology. We also have Dr. Turman, an educational psychologist, who talked about Black people, that we are very dull, and our dullness seems to be racial. Like, we have all these terrible history about Black people. And then we have Dr. Lynn in 1930, who says non-whiteness is linked to a genetic inferiority. So when you think about all of these processes that have actually been embedded in our education and psychology, it's no wonder it's very hard for schools to actually admit Black students into their program. And just to mention, Dr. Vibe, I am the only Black person in my cohort of about 16 students. So just think about it. So we're not graduating enough Black psychologists to actually meet the demand of the Black community. Not at all.
Wow.
And I'm guessing there are lots of programs where there are no Black students. I was the only one in my program. Admittedly, it was a while ago, but I was the only one. There weren't even racialized people. It was just me.
Well, Fitness IQ says, with the news, that's I think you share some good news. It's a breath of fresh air when they are aware. Talking about Kafui's experience in school right now. And Minnie Ann on cam says, here the mental health system is something I've been living with my whole life. And this week the system has shown me I'm on my own with the lack of resources available. That's pretty heavy. That is pretty heavy. So if I had wanted to get a Black psychologist before the pandemic, and I wanted to get a Black psychologist now, when would the odds be greater, before pandemic or after pandemic? Or is it the same, or has it gotten worse or better?
Well, I think the numbers have probably been steady, but people are probably trying to access services more, right? I mean, the pandemic was hard. So a lot of people, decided, okay, you know what? I'm going to find somebody. And when they started looking, thank goodness we had psychotherapists, we had social workers. So I'm sure they are the ones who've been doing the heavy lifting. I mean, no doubt the Black psychologists who exist are doing their very best, but there just aren't enough. And I remember a couple winters ago for Black History Month, Dr. Arthur Evans, the CEO of the American Psychological Association, he was our guest for Black History Month. And he acknowledged that the rate of anxiety and depression are 3 to 4 times higher now than they were pre-pandemic.
Wow.
So the demand is absolutely greater across the board. And, for Black folks, because of the double pandemic, all the awareness and the triggering that happened because of George Floyd, I'm sure a lot of people decided that was a good moment to reach out. So I'm sure the demand is much higher, but the numbers could not possibly have changed that much because it takes so long to grow psychologists.
This seems like a catch-22.
Yeah,
it is. It is. I don't think the numbers have changed much at all. I think people have actually started seeking other mental health professionals like psychotherapists and social workers, and are actually not so much maybe bothered by the lack of psychologists per se, because they need help, and they need help now. So they're really just going to take whatever they can get. And so I know that as a psychotherapist, I have been quite busy, and I've had to hire certain people to help me and work with me, and so that I can also go to school and take care of my family. So there has been this shift. I have to say, Dr. Vibe, when I was experiencing racial trauma in my university, which I have experienced, I was so bothered, and I needed somebody to talk to. So I reached out to one of the Black psychologists I know here in Ottawa, and I said, "Do you think you can refer me? Because I work in this field, so I know a lot of people." And so And just, you know, in the areas of a conflict of interest and things like that, I said, can you find me somebody outside of the province? And it was so hard. The wait list to see a Black psychologist was about 2 or 3 months. And I'm like, ditch this. I'm just going to find a therapist in the States. So I have a therapist, and she's based in Louisville, Kentucky. So I had to find an American therapist to actually help me deal with racial trauma. And that has been a challenge. And I wonder how many people are privileged to actually access services outside of their own communities.
Do we want to know that answer? I don't know if that's going to be a good one.
And the truth is that even if we think we can just somehow gut it out and manage these things without any support, it does take a toll. There's no way you're going to be as effective, whether it's at school or at work, with your family, in terms of your physical health and long term, without the right support. So it is important.
Really, this is crazy. Let me just put there. Jennifer says, I feel you, Minnie. It's been so bad, especially of late. Much love to you. Minnie on cam said, I shared this week that I had to access mental health urgent because I was suicidal. No, I did not get the services I needed on time and informed that I may have to have excess fee only services. So this is like a bad dilemma here because there's not enough people who look like us doing this. In order for that number to increase, that's 7 years.
Yeah. And you know, I don't even know what to say about this next piece because in principle, the optics look like we're making progress, right? Because at least now we have the section focused on Black psychology within the Canadian Psychological Association. So we've got some people mobilized who are doing our absolute best. And we also have a Black president of the Canadian Psychological Association. Yes.
What?
We do. And we have an honorary Black president of the Psychological Association. So, you know, on the surface of it, we have things that are going in the right direction. But somehow when things happen, when stuff hits the fan, they are contacting me. And last year they were contacting Kafui. We're going to try to redirect some of that to our Black president, but possibly her, maybe it's her mindset, maybe it's her priorities, maybe it's pressures we're not aware of, but people keep coming to us instead of her. And our honorary president, she's a big deal. I don't even want to say her name because these folks don't want to, they haven't really been, I guess to be honest, they haven't been as, we haven't had as cooperative an arrangement as we would have liked. This should have been a perfect storm to have good alignment and a concerted effort. So I'm hoping that perhaps at the upcoming convention that's happening later this month, maybe they'll have an opportunity to explain what they have been able to accomplish, because I'm hoping there are things they've done that were just done out of sight.
Okay, more conversation topic. Fitness IQ Cam goes 7 years. Minnie on Cam says, I was also told I needed to be an acute crisis to get a bed or a psychiatrist, and I'm not, but I still experience really dark symptoms of depression. Fitness IQ Cam says this needs to be spread along to us for keep Black care and trade so things are aligned in the future. But
it's an emergency. Like our house is on fire, I would say.
Which leads me to another question. Can someone who's non-melanated have the chance of providing the services to someone who looks like us?
I think some of them can, and some of them do.
Okay.
There are some who are strong allies who have spent a lot of time with Black and other racialized people, and they've done their homework. They understand the assignment, and they have learned about anti-Black racism. They understand anti-oppression, and they can be helpful. It's just there aren't enough of them.
Okay.
And sometimes the problem is that some people say the right things to get the business, but can't deliver.
Ezron goes, how can I vote for Dr. Helen to be the new president? I didn't know there was a campaign. Oh, okay.
I'm not sure they want me to be the president.
Okay. Good question coming here. Jennifer McWilliams says, do you believe more Psych D programs will be implemented across Canadian universities, or do you think we have stalled in that regard?
So
go ahead.
So the PsyD programs, Jennifer, is an excellent question. And just so you know, and I'm not sure, Jennifer, if you're aware of this, but there has been a lot of pushback from PhD level psychologists in Ontario. And I'm only going to speak for Ontario because this is a province I do a lot of research in and I know about. In Ontario, there's been a lot of pushback from some of the universities about a PsyD program. So I'm just going to explain to the public or to the audience. A PsyD program is a doctoral psychology program that is clinically based. It's 50% research, 50% clinical. PhDs are usually 80% research, 20% clinical, if it's actually in clinical psychology, just around that ball figure. So PsyDs are actually trained practitioners on the job. And the schooling for them does not take as long. It's not supposed to be taking them about 7 years. The reason it takes about 7 years to get a PhD in psychology, especially in clinical psychology, I can only speak to clinical psychology because there are different kinds of psychology out there. I know in counseling psychology, if you have a master's, it can take you up to 4 years at UBC, where I was actually considering at some point. The PsyD programs take a shorter amount of time and they are very clinically focused. They are a good alternative. So Jennifer, you are right on the money on that one. They're a good alternative in terms of producing more racialized psychologists in Canada. But most of the PhD level psychologists who are actually the academics in the university don't want a PsyD program in their school because they think it's going to decrease the standard, and these are very insulting conversations, Dr. Vibe. When you think about it, we've had some debates around that. I know there was an advocate, Dr. Monica Williams, who was advocating for that within the accreditation committee for the Canadian Psychological Association. And the pushback, Dr. Vibe, and everybody hearing this today is massive. Most PhD level psychologists in the institutions don't want a PsyD. Quebec has been the moving force. The province of Quebec has been the moving force for PsyD programs, and so I think PEI just started one in their province as well. But if you really wanted a PsyD program, you really probably have to go out to the States, or you have to find a private university to attend. Adler in British Columbia offers a PsyD program, and you have to pay a lot of money to go to school there, or you probably need to go and live in Quebec or attend school in Quebec to do a PsyD in Canada. And so you think about this, and it's like, what are we trying to protect in psychology? Why aren't we opening the doors, open the gates, so that we can actually educate more people? And some people bring it back and they say it's funding. We don't have money to support the students who come into the program. We need funding to do that. Well, if people want to go to medical school, they pay to go to medical school. Let people pay to be educated in our public education systems, just like we do for medical school.
Mm-hmm.
Fire!
But it's true.
So here's another thing. Minnie on Cam says, I have a primary GP who is a BIPOC woman for 20 years, but her referrals do not always get me to a BIPOC referral, even though I've expressed to her to find me BIPOC health practitioners. Health practitioners. This is crazy. This is crazy. The gap is widening.
Yeah.
The gap is widening. And then there's also a cost factor too.
Yeah.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, then let's move on to this thing. Of what we chatted about so far, what does this mean for students, children's, families, and individual Black adults?
Well, it means they need to look very hard, which is, and it's not even a fair look, right? I mean, it's like searching for hidden treasure. At least we're raising some awareness. And as a section within CPA, for the past 2 years, most months we host a public event so that we're offering webinars to at least share some education. I mean, it's a drop in the bucket. And frankly, it shouldn't even be our job. We are volunteers, right? But we've done it.
Hold on. We gotta go. I gotta stop right there. So, okay, I'll hold back because it'll come in the next section. I was gonna go in, but I'll hold my tongue till the next section. So, sorry to continue on.
We know that many of these problems are systemic, and they're going to take a minute to be solved. And we're doing what we can to advocate for better support to get students through graduate school, some bursaries, changing some of the policies that make it more of a level playing field to even get in. But these are things that are really outside of our control. So we have done some things that are within our control by having our small group of psychologists. It's a group of maybe 85, 90 people offering access to us through public events.
I want to ask then, both you are on the front line.
Mm-hmm.
What are the impacts that many of us are not seeing that you're seeing?
Well, I see what's happening to people who have lived with the consequences of white supremacy without any relief or without the appropriate support. And it makes it hard for people to reach their potential, whether it's their academic potential or their professional potential or their leadership potential. And there's often a link between mental health and physical health. So now there's a lot of research that's showing that people who live with ongoing oppression while also trying to remain composed usually age and weather in a way that's problematic in terms of their immune system, their cardiovascular system, neuroendocrine system, which is your reproductive stuff. So we're aging. And this is probably why racialized communities suffered more during the pandemic. Their immune systems were already taxed from dealing with ongoing racial oppression and other, linked versions of stress and trauma and oppression. So it's profound.
Before Kafui's been too quiet, but I'll get back to her. But so I just want to catch up. Fitness IQ Cam goes, LOL, yes, fire. Jennifer says, thank you so much, Kafui. Minnie on Cam says, you have to search globally for BIPOC mental health care. I've done that. Was the only way I could get counseling from someone who looks like me. Also, Dr. Aaron says, it's so interesting that what you are saying, Kafui, that PhDs tend to be unpopular options outside of Quebec when the training processes elsewhere in the world is also different.
She meant to say PsyD.
PsyD.
Yeah.
But, okay, so What?
What's the difference?
Yeah, and also too, what is the impact on the Black family?
Well, Kafui, you would know it intimately since you work with families. I just know it personally.
So the impact is that Black families will continue to suffer in terms of a lack of cultural competency within the framework from the psychologist they're seeing. Um, if you're seeing a psychologist who probably does not have a lot of competency with cultural humility or cultural understanding within that same culture, then they will continue to suffer. So what is happening within our systems is, if you take a look at all the trajectory and you look at the data, so I'm a researcher, so I can speak to some of the numbers that I'm aware of. So Black people are overrepresented in our child welfare system. Yes, we are. We're actually now the most represented compared to Indigenous families. It used to be Indigenous families, but now the Indigenous people have had some control over their child welfare system. And so
I want to stop right there. What is preventing us having control of our young people in the child welfare system?
I think we have a lot of racial stress. There's a lot of racism. Our families are actually having to work harder. And so there is, it's interesting you ask me that, because that's what I'm really studying for my doctoral research. And so thanks for asking that, Dr. Vibe. Families are actually not trusting of the systems in which they operate in. I have a hard time trusting the system. I really do. And I'm a professional. And so you think about it. If I have a hard time trusting the system, how much more people who are not informed about the system? And so you think about this. So Black families are not trusting of the systems in which they are actually supposed to be thriving and surviving in. And so when Black families are suffering, they keep it all to themselves. We keep it within ourselves. I come from a Black family, so I can speak to it. We keep it all to ourselves. We don't share our stories. We hide our stories, and we suffer in silence. I have to say, Minnie, who is on this call with us, I really commend you for being bold enough to talk about your own struggles, Minnie, because, you know, just being transparent about your struggles is actually a process of healing as well. And Black families, we tend to hide in that process because we don't trust the systems. Well, because the systems have failed us. It's almost like a double standard. So I come and see you as a therapist, and I tell you about the problems I'm struggling with. I tell you that I'm having a hard time taking care of my kids because I have to work 12-hour shifts and I'm exhausted. And then maybe the therapist, who is not culturally competent, asks the parent, so who's watching your children for you while you're working? And then she's like, nobody is. So a non-culturally competent therapist will probably just call the Children's Aid Society on this client who was just recently exposed and disclosed that she's actually having a hard time being a mother or being a parent. So the child welfare system is to actually straighten this mother, when really what the client is actually saying is, I need you to help me. Can you offer me some tools, some skills? I still have to work my job, my 12-hour job, and I have to pay my bills. Can you help me so that I can support my children, because I know something is not right? So instead of this therapist actually helping, this therapist ends up reporting. So now we have an investigation going on, and then it becomes like, I just came to talk to you, and here I am having to deal with the Children's Aid Society. So guess what? That client is not going to go back to talking to a therapist because she's lost that trust with that therapist. So what my college is doing, and I am so proud of my college, and I really want to give a high five to our registrar and CEO, Deborah Adams, who is doing wonderful work within our CRPO mandate. So this is the College of Registered Psychotherapists of Ontario. We are not perfect, but we're actually doing something right. We are on the right track. And what we're doing in terms of educating psychotherapists in Ontario is that try to build very strong alliances and therapeutic processes with your clients. Find ways of mitigating the challenges, especially when you're dealing with racialized families. And so my college is actually involved and invested in that process. We do not want to see more Black people in care. We don't want to see more Black children in care. We want to support families. Yes, I am not saying that if you are actually suspicious of child abuse or child concerns, maybe instead of maybe just reporting right away, maybe can you consult with CAS? Ask them, what do you think is going on? How can you help this family? Let's come from a place of helping and not from wanting to punish parents who actually don't even have the skill and ability to support their family. So I think we need to change our framework, and that's really cultural competency. Cultural competency is understanding the culture in which a person is trying to survive.
And Kafui, I'm going to add to that. I would imagine there are lots of people who seek support from a psychologist, and there's no consideration to their experience as a Black person and the multiple layers of complicated and sometimes bad things that happen as a result. So there's a blame and a focus on the individual without paying attention to the broader context and the oppression and the consequences that can be linked to their identity.
Also, some more comments. Minnie on cam. She's all in with you ladies today, by the way. Says, I'm the patient in the system. I had to use what I could to get and patch myself up. Luckily, my home base is my BIPOC family doctor for 20 years. Yes, her and Fitness IQ chatted about some of this yesterday on Fitness IQ Cam's show. They talked for 3 hours. And she also says this is why so many are labeled as high functioning. She also says, with new immigrants coming, they have no idea what the system will do to them before they come here. And I can certainly chime in on that because over the last year, so I've become very involved with helping. And you notice you don't hear the phrase immigrants. New Canadians is the new word now. And many of them look like us, and the trauma that they've left, plus with the trauma that's here, it's not fun. It's not fun. Not fun. So it just sounds like more and more people that look like us are falling through the cracks. Am I wrong to say that?
I think you're correct. And I remember, during the pandemic, a lot of us were reflecting on a bunch of things. And I remember thinking to myself, had I had different parents, I probably would have been streamed into a program at school that wouldn't allow me to go to university. And then present day, had I not been aware and proactive, the same thing would have happened to my son. And there's nothing wrong with his intellect. He's smarter than me.
Well, you done good, Mom. You done good. I'm telling you. Then, Kafui, I want to come back to you since you are in the educational ring right now. Why aren't they being more proactive? Was what happened over the last 4 years symbolism?
That's a really good question. I think people forget. And I think the life of Black people is very complex. And we're not the same as other races. I have to be honest about that. We're not the same. We have had so many years of oppression, so many, over 400 years of oppression. And the color of our skin has actually been used against us in different ways of being. So we are coming up against a lot of pushback. And so I think even though with George Floyd's passing or murder or killing, the whole world was in almost like an uproar, wanting to support Black people. And things were kind of shifting and moving. And then things just came to a halt again. And so, I look back and I'm like, what happened? And I think it just goes back to what the issue really is. And I think the issue is it worth serving these people? So I think our communities have all been racialized. All communities have been racialized to actually believe that Black people are inferior. I really believe that that people have actually been racialized to believe that crap, that lie, that story. And some of these people are actually professors, teachers, and they are actually racializing our kids through the same systems. And I have to tell you something, and I'm just going to talk about it on air here. I asked a family member, I said, do you know why we have a lot of Black people represented in the prison system? And one of my family members said, oh, yeah, that's because Black people do a lot of bad stuff. Can you believe this? I said, who taught you that?
Yeah.
Who taught you that? Who taught you that? Was it a white person who taught you that? Because if that's a white person who taught you that, it says, well, mom, it's my teacher. I'm like, oh my goodness. No. That is wrong information. You need to go back and educate that teacher in understanding that that's actually racism talk in the classroom. You cannot talk about Black people being overrepresented in our systems of corrections and not talk about the harm, not talk about the discrimination, not talk about the racism, not talk about the lack of support, all the things that actually keep us out of jail, and not even talk about the racial profiling that happens within our communities. Like these teachers are not talking about that. They are uncomfortable to have these conversations. Yet it is so easy to tell a child that, oh yeah, there are a lot of Black people in jail because they actually do a lot of bad stuff. You think about that. These are the teachers teaching our children, and they are perpetuating more harm in our society and also perpetuating racism.
See, nobody likes to talk about the big lie. And the big lie was the systematic dehumanization of Black people to enable slavery in the first place. Decent people cannot treat other humans who haven't harmed them worse than they would treat an animal. And all the stereotypes and justifications that have been in place since then, none of it's gone away. It's just quieter, maybe a bit more polite, but the core stereotypes are still in play. Yeah.
Still there. Fitness IQ goes, that's wild. And like no other race does bad stuff.
Oh yeah. I have to say something. You know what I told my son? I said, have you thought about who all these serial killers are? What's the shade of their skin? Yeah. What's the color of their skin? Let's not get started on that, Dr. Vibe.
No, you're dressed for the occasion. You're dressed for the occasion, so make it happen. Mignon Cam says, that's what I talked about. Stop feeding the false narrative. It's so much of it.
I want to see some researcher look into the roots of the serial killing and the other deviant behavior, because I suspect it goes right back to that original sin. But I'm not a researcher, so I'll let somebody else get into that.
Well, you know what? Kafui, Superwoman, would do it. She does everything, right? Like you heard her intro at the beginning. She don't sleep. She just she's 24/7, right? 100%. Let's move on and let's talk about oh boy. The progress Black psychology section support from certain Ontario-based organizations and the setbacks that you have faced. The Ontario Psychological Association, Blackwash, and upcoming convention. I'm gonna stay quiet for a few minutes. I'll let you two go at it now.
Well, the easier part to discuss is, I mean, it's easy to discuss, but it's actually quite gross. So members of our section and even people outside of the section have been experiencing anti-Black racism, anti-Muslim racism, anti-Arab racism on this email group or this listserv for the Ontario Psychological Association. So much so that going back at least a couple of years, some racialized people have chosen not to use that listserv because it's just so harmful. And for me, that by itself is terrible. And the fact that it's been allowed to go on for this long is terrible. But the part that bothers me even more than the lateral violence that our colleagues are experiencing is, well, what happens if racialized people unknowingly are referred to or seek support from these people who have demonstrated anti-Black racism, anti-Muslim, anti-Arab racism, and maybe other isms? Is there any surprise why those people never recover? Or maybe they approach these people, don't have a good experience, so they disengage. So in my mind, this is a misconduct situation. It's a human rights issue. So we're hoping that now that there's broader awareness, hopefully somebody who has more power than us as the volunteer Black psychology section can help sort this out, because this is not acceptable.
Kafui.
Well, I think there are always concerns around these associations, and anytime you have this power imbalance of people wanting to feel heard and wanting to feel respected, I think when you start treating people with a lack of dignity and respect, you're going to have these problems in your association. People join an association because they are probably professionals. There's a lot of like-minded thinking within the professional realm. There's support also for insurance purposes. In terms of liability insurance and things like that, or professional liability insurance, we must say. These are people coming together to form an association, and people still need to be treated with dignity and respect. In our field of psychology, we talk about respect for the dignity of all persons. It's an ethical principle all psychologists have to adhere to. And so if people are actually not doing that, that's hypocrisy, Dr. Vibe. That really is hypocrisy. We are talking about caring for other people, yet we are harming our own members within an association. And I think Helen is right. This is something that needs to be discussed and really dealt with for the dignity and respect for the profession and also for the people involved in this profession.
I want to ask about setbacks that you faced. I don't know if you shared any in the last ones, but are you willing to share any of the setbacks you have faced any along the way, any of them?
Well, the big setback is the appearance of progress because we have a Black psychology section, but we're not really supported. We're basically functioning as a de facto EDI and anti-racism organization, but we're doing it as volunteers when really it should be done by somebody who works for the Canadian Psychological Association. And in addition, we're kind of acting as a de facto affinity group or almost like an employee resource group if this was an organization where we were working. So that's been a heavy thing to try to do as a section. But with nobody else doing it, we've been trying to do it.
Then let me ask then, do those who have the control understand how big the need is?
Well, we,
Kafui, did I say something wrong? Sorry if I offended you. Go on.
so here's the thing. In September, when our president had her inaugural meeting to discuss her EDI, equity, diversity, and inclusion initiatives for the year, we did raise these things as things that were urgent, but we appreciated that these may not be CPA writ large things. They were kind of only for a subsection of the organization. So we were asked to write a letter, which we did. And because we are a section, they said that there were things that they just couldn't do for us because, or in terms of the structure of the organization, we're a section, even though there are needs and there's nobody else supporting these things. So we're kind of stuck.
There's an old song by Keith Sweat going back saying something just ain't right with that answer.
And that's the thing. I mean, I'm hoping that maybe our president and honorary president might come and talk to you, because
I'm here.
I would imagine that they should have good intention, and as Black leaders, they should want to be on the right side of these things. So maybe there are things that they've been trying to do that they just haven't had a chance to explain. I'm hoping there's more to the story than how it looks.
And just to correct Helen, because she talked about Black leaders. I think we only have probably a handful of Black leaders within the CPA, the Canadian Psychological Association. We have a Black president, and we probably have a few. We have one on the accreditation panel that I'm aware of, and I don't know of any other Black leader we have in the CPA. And so I am not sure. So Helen, maybe you can correct me. Maybe you know something I don't know. But from the many years I've been part of this association, which has been over 10 years, there's not a lot of Black leaders within the Canadian Psychological Association. In fact, that was the driving force of forming the Black Psychology section, which I spearheaded. So I think we need to kind of look at the systems at play here. We still have a lot of white people in the Canadian Psychological Association in power. I am yet to connect with those who I believe are for us as Black people. I do believe that there's a whole lot of them who actually don't understand the inner workings of Black communities. And I can say this for a fact because I look at the system and I'm like, how many people are you actually connecting with? Like, what kind of groups are you connecting with? When we talk about moving racism, fighting against racism, the only way we're going to do that is through the hearts of people. We're actually only going to be able to do that through the hearts of people. How would you know somebody's heart? If you are hanging out with them, if you're connecting with them in communities. From what I see, from the lens in which I'm seeing things, I don't see a lot of white people in power in psychology hanging out with Black people. I really don't. So if you're not hanging out with us, how in the world are you going to know anything about us?
Well, we have a few who are part of our section who do hang out with us, and they have been tremendous allies. So I want to be fair on that front.
Yeah, we have a few in our section. We have a few in our section. And the few in our section are the ones who actually even help us form the section. But if we're talking about leaders, I want us to be very careful. We're talking about leaders within the CPA. Leaders within the CPA. I don't think we do have a lot of leaders in the CPA who understand the lives and the struggles of Black people. And that has been the number one concern I have always had for my organization that I belong to. If you want to really understand Black people, you want to make sure that you are spending a lot of time with Black people. You cannot say you understand Black people if you are not hanging out with Black people. So we're talking about the allyships, and we're talking about all of these. I see the white people who participate in our section meetings. I don't see much leaders participating in our section meetings. So I am speaking to what I see and what I know, and I'm not seeing it.
Right.
And so I want us to be very careful that we are not actually saying that, people are for us. You can be for me on books. You can say it and you can write it and you can put it on a document. But are you conversing with me? Are you in dialogue with my people? Are you listening to the voices of Black people, or you just want to do what you want to do? From what I know, we were actually supposed to be in a committee. I left that committee because that committee, in my opinion, was not listening to the voices of Black people. It wants to listen to everybody's voices. And this is the problem, Dr. Vibe. The issues of Black people cannot be minimized. We cannot minimize the issues of Black people. But it seems like everybody wants to talk about everything else but being Black. It's easier to talk about BIPOC and just say BIPOC. But hey, the sufferings of Black people are so unique. And I'm not saying that our race is better than anybody's race, but I'm saying that the suffering of Black people is so unique, very different from any other race. So when we're talking about Black people and meeting the needs of Black people, we need to look at the suffering. We are overrepresented in the jail system. We are overrepresented in the welfare system. We are overrepresented in any negative institution. We are not the same race that people need to want to lump all of us together in one. No, there is something wrong with the society when you have the same dark-skinned people being represented in negative institutions. Now, I will not be compared to any other race that is not overrepresented in negative institutions, Dr. Vibe.
100%.
So it's the all lives matter versus the Black lives matter.
Well, yeah, and many of people will say they don't like the term BIPOC because there's everyone's lumped in, right? You all, and no offense to the BIPOC community out there, but many of you say, I just want to focus on the Black. When you bring the other cultures in there, it waters it down. It doesn't keep the main focus on us.
I think there's a problem with focusing on us. I really think there's a reason why people divert. Even when I go to some meetings, it's easier to talk about racialized people. But then when you use the anti-Black racism, it stirs up all kinds of feelings because I think I know what it is. And I'm married to a white man, so I can speak this in confidence. It stirs up feelings of guilt and shame and the harm done to Black people over a number of so many years, and the consistency
it continues to
and continues to. So I think it's very hard for people to talk about it, and it creates a system where I might as well just talk about every other race and not just talk about Black people, because when I talk about Black people, I got to talk about slavery. I got to talk about the harm that has been done to this particular group over centuries and continues to actually happen. It's no wonder I'm still the only Black person in the class. Meanwhile, my university has 67% BIPOC. So yes, there are all other races in my class, but yet I'm the only Black person in my cohort. Now that's a problem.
Fitness IQ wants to hire you. She says, say it again. And also says, talk to things. Man. So how often you coming back there, Kafui? No, sorry. She's going. Minnie on Camp says the published stats of ODSP does not show who is Black. Are you kidding me? What?
Well, we don't collect race-based data.
That's true. No, compared to our neighbors to the south, there's a significant difference. All right. We have a question here. Maybe we start winding it down. So what's next? Is there a way to fix, unquote, these issues? And what is the Black Psych section doing to address the issues? Okay.
Some of these systemic issues we have tried to solve, and they're going to take some time to unwind and to turn around. So our year is coming up in June. Our year kind of restarts within CPA. So our executive is going to have to get together, and my suggestion is that we still have an outward face, but we also start to provide supports for members only. So have some, maybe 50% of our events still supporting non-members, but the other half focusing on students and existing people in psychology to understand what their needs are and try to internally provide some support, some mentorship, guidance, whatever it takes to make sure we don't lose anybody falling through the cracks. Because that's definitely within our sphere. And, you know, not to say we're going to give up on the other things. I mean, our section exists, so I'm sure we still have a role to play in terms of advocacy, but
yes.
Yeah.
So ideally for both you, what would be good next steps for the section? You've been involved a little bit now. You see what's working and especially what is not working. What would be next best steps to get it working and getting it to the goal, dream, and desire that it needs to get to?
Well, there are some things that I'd like to say privately.
Okay. No, so I fully get it. No, I fully understand. I know you say whatever you want and whatever you're comfortable with, but
certainly doing things to support the existing students. So the aspiring graduate students, the current graduate students, and the people in the profession who are sometimes having a hard time. You know, because we've heard of some of our members facing some reprisal because they've stood up and said, "Hey, you can't say these things."
They're not getting support from the organization on this.
I don't think so. Otherwise, they wouldn't be coming to us.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We wish they would go to our Black president. And frankly, our honorary president has a huge legacy and a platform. So she, you know, hopefully they can start going to her and saying, "Hey, maybe you can tell people about what's happening to us. Maybe you can use your 40 or 50 years of experience to provide some guidance and mentorship." Yeah.
The few things I think that the Black Psychologist section could help support. So when we started talking, we're talking about the issues surrounding Black mental health care and how we can actually do better, right? So that's where we want to go. Now, the issues surrounding Black mental health care is usually access to service providers who are competent to serve Black people. And people need to be competent. They need to understand the communities and the lives and the well-being of Black people. And so if we're going to be training people, it starts with education. Our education system is flawed. It's really flawed when it comes to educating future Black therapists and Black psychologists. So I can speak to psychology in the sense that that's what I'm studying. And so in terms of looking at that, our accreditation system needs to actually start having some specific requirements for universities to actually have a quota. And I know some people don't believe in affirmative action, but I don't know any other way. I don't know any other way. If there's a better way, maybe there's somebody in the audience who can talk to me about it, because some people say, oh, everybody should just show that they are qualified and all that kind of stuff. Well, good luck with that in psychology, maybe in medicine. But in psychology, it's a very subjective process in terms of admission. The admission process can be quite subjective. A professor or a supervisor needs to like you or needs to want you to actually take you on in terms of doctoral programs. Maybe not so much with a master's program, but in terms of PhD levels or PsyD, as we're talking about, you need to have a supervisor who wants to work with you. I did hear from a past meeting. I was in an EDI meeting last Friday, where a young student, one of my colleagues, was talking about the fact that when she was doing her honors degree in psychology, she encountered that some of her Black friends or some of her colleagues who were Black in her class were not accepted into the labs, into the a research group. So a lab is a research group where you have a supervisor potentially who would take you on as a PhD student in the future. Well, guess what? Black students were not getting called on, and they were not being accepted into the labs. I remember even as a Black undergrad student many years ago, I actually wanted to work in a professor's lab, and he refused me. He took a white male student over me. And I never knew of any of my friends in psychology who actually were able to get into a white professor's lab back in the day. So we're talking about the early 2000s. And it was very sad. It was very sad for me to hear that is still persistent, because this person who was talking about this issue was a very young student. Now I'm a very matured student who has returned to school. So I'm thinking about the whole structure of education in psychology or in mental health needs to be revamped. Somebody in power needs to really look into the educational processes that are embodied in this education process, and something needs to change. We either have to change the way we accredit all these programs and make sure that there is a quota of Black people in the programs, because the Black people are not accessing care because they don't trust the system. And so we need to make sure we're serving, and Black people matter. People need to stop minimizing us and realizing that we are also a part of Canada. We actually make Canada beautiful. Without Black people, I don't think this country will be beautiful. We make this place beautiful. And so they need to take care of us. They need to take care of our families. And they need to do that by actually engaging in educational systems that are blocking the path of Black people getting psychological education. So that needs to be looked at. So the accreditation system and the way it supports students in psychology needs to change. The racism in psychology really, really needs to be looked at. And I think at this point, it should not be the institutions looking at themselves. It's very hard for educations to change their system of governance if they've been acting a certain way for a long time. I think it is time either the provincial government, Doug Ford and his team, look into the education system of the trainings that is involved in psychology, psychotherapy, counseling, social work, all these programs that are connected to mental health. There needs to be some accountability in check, where these educational systems are really focused on training Black students to become Black psychologists and Black therapists.
I think you've got some people ready to vote for you. But this, look at this. Mitty says Doug Ford cannot even probably lift disabled Canadians out of poverty. We need that. We need someone that cares. And also Fitness IQ Ken, who I think will manage your campaign when you're ready to run, says facts.
And we don't need to reinvent the wheel. I'm not saying what's happening in the States is a perfect solution, but it's a very good start.
Okay.
Years ago, they started collecting race-based data, so they knew how many students are in, like how many Black and other racialized students are in graduate programs, how many are faculty members teaching in these programs. And because they decide who gets accreditation and who does not, they made representation mandatory. They gave them a grace period, but at a certain point, they had to have representation among graduate students and among faculty in order to hold on to their accreditation. So we could do that.
But
yeah.
Why? What's the reason we're not?
Well, the deciders have chosen to go a different way for now. And I'm sure part of it's that nobody's really paying attention to this. So it's just a small niche problem within psychology.
Minian Cam says, yes, urgent care in my evaluation system is really broken right now. That's why fee-only services was provided. Then my conversation piece to both you is, what can we do who are not in the profession? Do you have calls to action for people like myself, for the minis, for the Fitness IQ Cams of the world that are not in the profession? What can we do to advance this to where it needs to get to?
I think the public or the audience can start actually talking to their MPs, and we got to start from somewhere. Talk to your MPs about making sure the mental health care is actually compared to the medical health care that we have. If we have put a lot of trust into our OHIP, Ontario Health Insurance Plan, why don't we do the same for mental health care? Let's make it easily accessible, so just like we do for medical care. And I know the system is not perfect even with the medical system, but we need to start from somewhere. Let's start, because accessibility is an issue. So if we can actually start lobbying the government or even just advocating for our communities to get that access, I think that would be a really good step in the right direction, because I'm all for promoting mental health in our communities, and especially for Black people. Let's not make money the issue. Let's make sure that we have a system that cares about our minds and our bodies, because these two work in synchronicity together. We cannot say we're just going to provide you with access to medical care and make it so easy and make access to your mind so challenging. That's not right. That's not fair. We need a system that actually incorporates all of these together, making accessibility a lot easier. So that's one. Number two, I think that we really also need to be really advocating for our universities and institutions that train professionals like myself and Helen, and start looking at expanding, opening the floodgates, opening the gates for people who are interested in getting trained in psychology, in counseling and psychotherapy, who are actually Black or even racialized people, because other communities are also suffering. And let's make sure that the doors are open, instead of maybe just narrowing these doors to people who only a few handful, and creating a spirit of elitism. So being a psychologist seems like an elitist profession. I don't see any elitism in it. It's about serving people. We're called to be helpers. If we want to help people, let's make sure that we're not just helping some people and actually ignoring those who actually need the care. So I think our education systems need to be held accountable for some of these practices.
Helen?
Ditto. No, I mean, I agree. I fully agree. And we have a template that works better in the United States. They acknowledged the harm that psychology has inflicted on the nation in terms of perpetuating anti-Black racism. And they've taken some concrete steps, and things are improving over there. So it's not like we don't have a roadmap.
There you go. Fitness IQ says, got it. I've given 2 homework to speak to those people, them. And then Minnie says, Ontario Disability Support Program is not large enough to support fee-only psychological care. If they're suggesting fee-only services, it's $1,308 a month for all living expenses and needs. So there's a gap here about people able to do who look like us, the cost, the time to get through. There's, like you said, Helen, early on, there's a number of working parts here that need to be acted on. But in the short term, that's my concern right now. What can be done in the short term? Because more and more people are falling through the cracks. And if they can't get the care from people who look like us, what's the alternative? If the money's not going to be put there, what's the alternative? I think people who look like us, we have to take this serious, and sometimes maybe we have to do something on our own and can't rely on others.
Oh, we're trying.
I hear you. I hear you. But again, to get more people, young people taking this, parents have to encourage their young people about this. That's another thing. That's another challenge. I say about 7 or 8 different moving pieces to this puzzle right now.
Yes. And parents are only, I'm a parent, and parents are only going to support a system they trust. So if you have a parent who has accessed psychological services and mental health services and has seen the great benefit of accessing those services, you're going to come back and say, you know what, this is a wonderful profession to get into. But if a parent has been burned by the system, oh, trust me, they will not be praising it.
Well, and let's look at it. Look how many hundreds or thousands of people who look like us over the years have had bad experiences with the medical system. This is a doozy. Ladies, any final comments?
I'm just grateful that you're here and you bring stories to light that might otherwise never, ever be discussed. So thank you for doing what you do.
My pleasure, my honor. Kafui, when's the campaign starting?
The campaign began.
Okay.
Already begun. And it's actually called Black Mental Health, Promoting Black Mental Health in Canada. And I want to thank you so much. Your platform allows us to engage in these conversations that support our Black community that Helen and I are so passionate and devoted to and committed to. We want our communities to be well and sound in mind and in their bodies as well. And we want to support our communities. We know that when Black families are doing well, we know that we all do better. We all do better.
100%. There's my thoughts. The foundation of success of African people is the family. When the family gets things right, magic happens.
Yes.
And generationally, not just in the short term, because the impacts of today are going to be for years and years to come. Before these ladies leave us, there's a contact information. There's Helen's website. I've also put it in the comments section on all the platforms you're watching this live on the replay. And here's Kafui's campaign information address. That's right here. Just saying email address. But ladies, two last favors. First of all, don't be strangers for so long. No, I don't want to wait months and months.
We love coming to see you, but we've had our hands full.
I fully understand, but this is a place where you can give yourself grace and manage your time and energy. And we need, because outside of both of you two, I don't get a lens into this world. And we need, and I know you've got your lives lead 100%, but don't be strangers, even via email, right? Just, even if you want to come on every once in a while and provide us updates, please be appreciated.
I'm sure at some point we're going to come back and we're going to say, look at all these wonderful things that have happened.
You know what? Even if it's one thing, come back.
True.
Right? It's the little things that make the difference, not the big. If you're waiting for that big thing that could take years to come, every little thing that you want to share with us, please, if you can, come and share it with our family. All right?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Val. We're going to keep hope alive.
Yes.
Oh, you see, you got your campaign is on. The campaign. Well, no. If you know, this is the Kafui campaign. I like that.
We just need to get her finished her graduate program quickly.
So when does your graduate program finish?
Oh, well, we're trying our best to make sure that I finish way before the 7-year term. I am not doing this in 7 years. Absolutely not. So I'll be doing it way sooner than that.
Please. 7 years? No. Look, there's too many people that are going to fall through the cracks in 7 years.
But thank goodness we have our colleagues in social work and psychotherapy and counseling.
Yes. Yeah. 100%. All right, ladies, last 2 words. Don't just manage your time, manage your energy, and remember to give yourselves grace.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Take care.
Thank you.
All right, Kafui's campaign has started, everybody. So, next thing I know, I'll be getting information where you can contribute to the Kafui campaign. All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching today. Appreciate it 150%. Before we exit, subscribe to the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube and hit the notification button. Also, like the Dr. Vibe Show on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. If you want to advertise your business, product, or service on the show or any of my platforms, please email me, dr.vibe@thedrvibeshow.com. Watch replay. Oh, sorry, I had this last thing. There we go. Why is that not clicking? I'm having some okay, I know. There we go. You can watch replays of Black Canada Talking at the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and also the website, the drvibeshow.com. Have some few last comments here. Minnie says, small wins waters the hope, 100%. Also, Jennifer says, thank you so much, Kafui, Helen, and Dr. Vibe. Thank you so much. And don't be a stranger. Like, you're watching this on the Dr. Vibe Show YouTube channel. If you're up to it, please subscribe so you get and hit notification buttons so you get updated on upcoming conversations that we host here. And Jennifer McWilliams, this is from Minnie on Campus. I was a guest on the show this week, so my contact information is around. Reach out. This is what I like the best, when people who did not know each other start developing relations with each other. That is 100% what we're all about. All right. Let's shut it down. As always, live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get small to get stronger. Block assumptions, then aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Love, faith, and respect. And as always, don't just manage your time, manage your energy, and remember to give yourself grace. God bless. Peace to all. Keep the faith and walk good.